If you're building your ABA company and you're tired of guessing, this is for you. We built the EBCBA blueprint to give you real structure, systems, and support without the fluff. Details are in the description. Welcome everyone, another live stream. And these are amazing when we get somebody who really has just zoomed in on one specific area of the ABA business. And today we have Scott Herbst, Ph.D. He's the founder and president of SixFlex Training and Consulting, and as well as the chief programming officer for Inquiry Inc., with a doctorate from the University of Nevada, Reno, and an extensive publication record in leadership and organizational behaviors. Scott's focus is on the relationship between the leader and the led, the mentor and the mentee. And this is really important to focus on as a business owner, because these are the things that affect everything else in your business. That relationship, if it's strong and you're a solid leader, your people will follow you. They will listen to you when you talk. And everything that we do in our businesses, from our system implementations to overcoming obstacles, are all dependent on the quality of that relationship. So with that, Scott, thank you very much for your time and welcome to ABA Impact.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And where should we start? Should I just start talking?
We were talking a little bit before we started. We have a lot of issues, and the one that we're working on, workshopping right now, is every week we have 2 or 3 things that we're focusing on as they come up from the group or from our Odyssey members. And one of the tactics that's being deployed is, we call it Walmarting. And the tactic that Walmart and companies like them have been using for decades. This is not a new idea. It's not a new concept, but moving into town, wrecking the market, cornering everyone, and then changing the deal, right?
Yeah.
In Walmart's case, they're attacking on the demand side. They're attacking on the price of your product. And they'll come in, they'll sell toothbrushes that are $5 a piece everywhere else in town, and they'll sell them for 10 cents. And nobody's buying toothbrushes from any of the mom and pop places anymore. They're all buying them from Walmart. So it puts all the mom in business. And when there's nobody else selling toothbrushes, now Walmart can raise the price back up to $5 or more, even in some cases. So it's that kind of bait and switch. You've sold your soul, so to speak, by going and buying from the Walmart, and then it's too late. In the ABA market, we have these big box ABA companies, and some of them are private equity backed, some of them are just large, and they'll move into an area and they overpay frontline employees, clinical staff by 20, 30% in some cases. And it's not something that you can compete with numbers wise. If you sit down and try to play that game with them, you will lose. They have more cash. They're backed by Blackstone or other large companies, but I haven't heard anybody being backed by BlackRock yet, but that's scary enough, right? So you don't have the funds in your checking account to make that play with them and run your defense against their overpowering offense. The only way to stop it is to educate your team and to make sure that they understand what's happening. The only way you're going to be able to do that is if they trust you, if they understand what you're teaching them. The only way they're going to listen is if you're a solid leader. There's a million different situations like this. This is a very complex market. It doesn't always look complex. It looks pretty simple. You start an ABA company, hire all kinds of people, you're lining customers out the door. That looks like a simple business.
Credentials, start billing.
So people get tricked into thinking this is easy, and then they start having to deal with a major competitor moving in and using a tactic like this. And if you don't have the underlying infrastructure to have systems in your business, if you don't have the leadership credibility, you're not getting out of that situation. So how do we build a bulletproof team around us, the owner? That's really, I think, the big struggle that most of us deal with.
Yeah. A great question. All right. I'm going to launch into my spiel then, because I think it actually lines up pretty well with this. First off, the thing I want to share, and I'll share, there's an assessment that'll be available. I'll either share it. You can email me. I think that'll be in the show notes. One thing I hadn't considered was to build a landing page. We'll get that handled. But anyone watching this will be available to you. So I want to start with, to speak to what you're saying, is what's leadership? And there's a lot of definitions. What I say leadership is that it's communicating so that someone imagines a future that matters to them and then takes action towards the fulfillment. Not just action, but like effective action towards the fulfillments of that future. And did that land? Tell me if you've got question. Okay, cool.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. So that's leadership. And I think that when I can't say it's always the truth, there's some private equity companies that are actually doing good work out there
Yep.
and committed to doing good work. And I've had the opportunity to interact with some of them. And then there's other companies that are really doing exactly what you said, which is we've got to take over the market. And when we do, we are going to cut back services, not actually cut back services so much, but cut back the resources that go into these sources, which includes like people. I haven't heard of anyone like cutting pay, but what I have heard is upping billing requirements.
Yeah, and that's
You
the thing,
know, like,
overloading
oh, you're
capacity.
going to start at like $90,000 for whatever billing. And then all of a sudden it's like they're expecting you to bill 35 hours a week. And built into that is you've got to drive for 10 or 12 hours.
And realistically, it's the same thing. If I say I'm going to give you this amount of money for this
Yeah.
amount of work,
Yeah, exactly.
and then all of a sudden it's this amount of work, then you've got a pay cut.
And what I hear from people who have come from those companies and had a bad experience, because a lot of times people go thinking, oh, cool, I'm going to make more money. And then they realize that, wow, there is no pathway for me. And that's like part of leadership is actually like looking at what matters to your employees. Are you providing opportunities for them to fulfill on what they care about beyond just making the money, right? People are interested in growth and development. They're interested in moving up in a company. They're interested in creating new things. And not everyone, but a lot of people, right? So where they're actually focused on not just like, how do we get people to work and deliver billable services, but how do we actually have them? How do we create a place that their wants and needs get fulfilled as well? And that's part of leadership. It's not just creating a vision. It's actually like creating a vision and then having people adopt and take ownership of that vision. And part of that is that they've got a stake in it, that like, oh, I'm working towards that. I'm going to grow and develop. So that's a big part of it.
So I wanted to go back to what you said, like your definition of leadership. I wholeheartedly agree with it. You have to get somebody to visualize what they want their future to look like,
Yes.
and show them a pathway to that future, and then get them to take action on it. But one of the challenges that I've seen, it just as an employer in general, is getting to the truth of what they actually do want. I think there's a large barrier between an employee to a leader, especially like in the job interview process, or when you're in the context of an interview for a promotion or an employee review, and you say, what are your goals? It's not in a vacuum. There's this relationship that already exists, and there's these preconceived notions about that relationship where the person says they might be a great RBT or BCBA, they might be excellent clinically, they might be very caring with the kids, but right now, all they really care about is making enough money to pay for their wedding next year or something. Like getting to their core and really understanding what their true wants are is a challenge sometimes, because they want you to feel like they're clinically focused, but maybe they just need to make as much money as they possibly can right now, but they don't want to say that. So there's always that kind of barrier. And that's not the only kind of situation, but people don't always want to say what they want.
I've got some advice for that. This goes to my assessment. Okay. So there's 4 key competency areas that the assessment covers. And I should be really responsible that there's absolutely research behind these different things. I made up the areas where I was like, oh, they fit into these 4 groups. So you could probably come up with 3, you could come up with 6. There's nothing necessarily true about how I organized them. But the first is communicating for a larger vision and being able to articulate, here's the difference the work makes, here's what I'm committed to, here's what our mission is, and stay focused on that during challenging situations. Okay. A second piece, the connection to what you're saying, which is actually, I'm going to say what you said, Derek, is like really being able to listen in a way that people openly communicate.
Yes.
And being able to recognize that people aren't being completely open and adjust your communication so that they do open up. Not everyone will. People have long histories before they got to your company. And some of those histories include being really punished for being open and honest and saying what you want and having it really not work out. But you can at least develop the skills and practice the skills to have people open up. Now, what I was going to say is that what's not obvious to the connection to that is personal accountability and integrity. And you mentioned it. I can't remember if you mentioned it when we hit record or if it was in one of our prior chats, but you said something about being someone who people will listen to. And that, two things, really having your personal integrity and accountability managed does two things. First, it does that, where, if I'm operating rock solid integrity, the people around me will see that and they will listen to me. Like, they'll take what I say seriously because they know they can count on what I say. But the other thing is that it actually, having that handled creates a lot of peace of mind. And anyone watching this could look for themselves when you're on top of your stuff, like you're handling your agreements, the ones that you're not handling or not sure about, you're in communication with the people involved, you're letting them know what's going on. When that's the case, there's a level of just being present that becomes available. And being present to actually look past what's right in front of you and look at that vision, but also be present with the people who are around you. And that's a huge piece to being able to hear. And two things: one, just hear what people are communicating, but two, creating a context where people will not only listen to what you say, but people are pretty sure that it's okay to say what there is to say to you. I call it being unmessable with, and not like unmessable with that you are not going to get me, I'm too tough, etc. But unmessable with, really, no kidding, you can say anything to me and it's not going to rattle me. Like, I'll still be able to.
Not being in a reactive state, not
Yes.
being like a person who reacts. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And it comes down to your facial expressions too. Like, it's not just what you say, it's your body language. It's when somebody says something to you, like, you recoil or you advance or you make a funny face or you smile or frown. Like, those are all important things.
Yes. And if you've got your integrity handled, that stuff just comes naturally.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to think about, am I making a weird face? No, I can actually just be here and really listen. And if I really listen, responding is easy because I'll be able to hear what's going on, what your concerns are, what your interests are, and then say, all right, like, that interest, I appreciate it. We can actually, you know what? Oh, you're getting married next year? You want to make more money? Let's talk about maybe you can bill more, right? Let's talk about what that would look like. And if it works, if it would work for you, if it would work for your life, if you can deliver high quality service while you're doing that.
No,
it wasn't babbling. I just talked a lot. Let's say that.
No, it's good information though. And
any comments, anything you want to add or ask or whatever?
I think what you're getting at, it's if you are that person in your company, I think it's Jordan Peterson that says, be the person that everybody is going to turn to at your father's funeral. When there's a void, are you the type of person that people want you to fill in their life? Are you somebody that can be relied upon? Like, when you do say something, when you say something, are you the person who when I say something, it's either going to happen or I'm going to give you a really reasonable, rational explanation why it didn't. Like, it was not under my control or something happened. And I'm also careful about what I do say. I measure myself before I talk. This is turning into a one-on-one leadership session, but I think it's important for anybody who's listening to this to look at this in yourself. Like, when I say something, how much do I really believe that it's going to happen? That's the first step. Are you actually going to get that done? And that's hard for some people. And I think you have to have that faith in yourself that you are able to assure yourself that you're going to figure something out when you're telling your team, hey, don't worry, we're going to work this out. We're going to figure it out. It's not a problem. But inside, in your mind, you're losing it. Like, it's difficult to get everyone else to calm down. So it's more about what's happening inside, and that ends up coming out. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm going to offer some advice to our listeners or anyone else. If you find yourself uncertain about what you can promise, to start looking at the stuff that may occur as really small and close in and start getting that handled. And what I mean by that is that if people can't count on you to answer an email, you're not going to be able to promise that you're going to be ready for a promotion in 6 months, or we're going to be able to expand your caseload, or we're going to be able to do X, Y, or Z, because your life isn't handled to the degree where you can promise you'll answer an email. But if you start getting that stuff handled, and by the way, it's your whole life, not just work. Are you breaking promises to your kids all the time, saying that I'm going to take you, and then being too tired, or, oh, shoot, I didn't get it handled at work, so sorry, I can't take you out tonight or be at your game or whatever. If you start getting those things handled and really doing the examination of what's in the way, that either, one, my own behavior, I can take this behavior out and it would free something up, or a behavior I could put in, like planning more, preparing, whatever, delegating, asking for help. If you start getting those promises handled, other promises will start to occur. Other things, you'll see promises to make that you didn't see you could possibly make before. Does that make sense?
Minor commitments before major commitments.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, I really took on my email this year. And like a year and a half ago, I wasn't reliable for email because my email was a mess. I don't know how many thousands. It was like close to 10,000 unread emails in my professional account. And it was just getting gunky. Like, really, because you'd send me an email and it would get lost in the like 4 different newsletters that I was subscribing to. And so I really took that on, and not just, I'm going to delete them all, but no, I'm going back through. I'm going to delete, unsubscribe, answer any that I missed. I sent a lot of emails like, hey, I just apologize. Like, you sent this 6 months ago and I didn't get back to you. And is there anything I can do now to amend this? And then for the last probably 4 months, I've been at 0. It was actually great. I got in touch with people who, like, I dropped out, but now I can promise, like, all right, like, I'm helping to plan the SC South Carolina ABA conference. And I'm like, our promise is 350 people this year. And I don't know how I can control 350 people showing up, but you know what? That's my promise. And I know I can play for that.
Yeah, I think what you're also hitting on here is your habits, right? What are your habits for meeting your commitments? And your meeting of commitments consistently has to do more with your habits than your goals. And just saying, I'm going to keep my inbox at 0. So that means that by the end of the day, every day, my inbox is going to be at 0. I'm either going to answer everything positively, negatively, or decide I don't need to answer it and get rid of it. And that is a habit development that people can implement. Once you get to 0, it's not hard to stay at 0 as long as you're on it every day. When you get to 30,000, getting to 0 is tough.
And the email is just an example, because look, for you, it could be, I don't get to meetings on time. Like every meeting, I'm like 5 to 7 minutes late. Start getting to meetings on time.
Yeah.
And look at what's in the way of getting to meetings on time. Or it is, I know that people reliably break promises to in this order: themselves and then their families. And knock that off. If you say you're going to go to gym 3 times a week, really look at what is in the way of me getting to the gym 3 times a week, and what's it going to take for me to do that. Or if I am unreliable for getting to my kid's soccer game when I say, yes, I will be there, look at what's in the way of that and start getting your kid's soccer game. Or at least be honest with your kid and say, you can't count on me.
Did Josh pay you to bring up the gym to me?
Would he have?
Maybe. Maybe.
Oh,
He would do something like that. Your habit building. So what are the areas that you like? I know you done a ton of research on this from multiple different angles. So what are the areas that are most visible, I guess, most influential from the perspective of a team member that maybe wouldn't seem so obvious to us in leadership positions? What are the perceptions that we don't know are happening where we're potentially screwing up if we're out of alignment?
really good question. I think 2 places to look here. The obvious ones are doing what you said you would do. Another place to look is if you're, and we're talking now about how do I create myself so that people will listen to me? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
A huge one is meeting expectations that you didn't agree to. And, or saying, I'm not going to do that, but getting clear on expectations. And in a workplace, some like baseline conditions for leadership are just things like people have clear expectations and they're communicated, that people are, their performance, when it's possible, is objectively measured, and that they get feedback on those objective measures. And you're not going to be able to objectively measure everything. I don't know how much time you would want to spend on defining things like interacts appropriately with their colleagues and parents or families and customers, and you just know it when you see it. But if you're measuring the other stuff, hey, I expect you to get 20 things done this week, and it's pretty clear, like, you can reliably expect, I'm going to expect those 20 things, and I'm letting you know what you are and aren't getting done and the quality of it, then people will tolerate the when you see it type stuff, right? Making sure people have what they need to do their job. And then if you're not going to meet any of these things, getting in communication and letting people know the moment I know, hey, I said I would get you those materials today. It's going to be tomorrow. How can I empower you to get your job done or to do something without those materials? Maybe I already said it. I think it provides regular feedback and make sure that it's predictable to your employees, that they know when they're going to see you. And if it's not like every Thursday at noon, we have our meeting, that they know that, okay, I at least know the next time I'm going to connect with you, or I know how to reach you in the meantime. Did that answer your question? Speak to what you were asking?
Yeah. And we have our Odyssey calls every week. And on one of them, a couple of members were struggling with, we're building our systems, we're building our procedures, and we're trying to get them implemented. And not everybody is taking it seriously. Not everybody is really following along. My caveman approach to it is there's 5 reasons that somebody's not doing what you need them to do. It's either they don't know what they're supposed to do, they don't know how to do it, they don't know when it's supposed to be done by. You got to give them deadlines. So, that predictable expectation of when it's going to happen. And their why, like the why is important, because what is their reinforcer? What is their incentive for actually getting this done?
Yes.
And then the last one is they've been blocked, right? There's something that's keeping them from doing it, and they don't know it because you haven't given them a mechanism to overcome bottlenecks within your system. So look at all those 5 reasons. And if it's not getting done at that point, then you may have an underperforming individual that you need to address and have a conversation with. Because if they have all those 5 things and you've given it to them properly, and you're confident that you've performed at 100% as the leader, then you need to take ownership of the situation and either training, ask them why, don't immediately assume that when somebody drops the ball, that it's their fault. Assume that it's your fault first. Go through all this, try to figure out what you did, what you could have done better in the situation. If you legitimately can't find anything, that's when, you need to pull the person aside. But I think it's 90% of what we're talking about, probably closer to 100% of what we're talking about here is communication, trust, integrity, communication. And that's what it gets broken down to. And that consistency you mentioned, that predictability, and the predictability comes from consistency. If the same thing happens every week on the same day at the same time, and it's the same kind of agenda, then everybody knows what they're showing up for. And they already know, have I been doing well? Have I not been doing well? And calling that out. If they have done well, make sure you're calling that out.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. I like the caveman approach. Do they know how? Do they know when? Do they know why? Are they blocked?
What, how, when, and why? And then
What, how, when, why are they blocked? And I haven't said this here, but my mission in life is that people are free to communicate. And I really believe that anyone can say anything, and people really can hear anything. They just currently lack the skills. And so everything I do is really just a Trojan horse for bringing people up to communicate, because I think it's in communication where everything gets fulfilled.
Yeah. And I think the organization comes back to consistency. If you're not organized, you can't be consistent. If you're not consistent, you're going to fail in these areas where you're supposed to keep promises.
Yeah.
You're supposed to show up to things. And really, it all just comes down to being organized and being consistent. And
yeah. That's like the
open.
foundation. And the more organized and together you are, and that includes more than just like having your papers like your desk neat. It's, are you up to date on your emails? Are you handling stuff so that people have what they need? They call it an organization for a reason, right? But do your processes work, etc. That's really the foundation. That it's not integrity like good, bad, right, and wrong. It's more like the integrity of a foundation. Is it whole and complete and solid?
Stability. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we always look at, if anytime I'm consulting with anybody or looking at their business or looking at their processes, the why is also important. But yeah, pulling rank never works. Why are we doing it this way? Because I told you, like the frustrated mother of the
Oh,
toddler.
yeah.
Why?
Brilliant.
Why? Because
Brilliant.
I told you. Or this is how it's done. This is just how it's done in the industry. This is how I learned how to do it my last job.
Yeah.
Breaking down everything that you do as an organization or as a person, and really looking at it from a first principles point of view, and really knowing the reason behind everything, right? Why do we include this field in our session notes, right? Why are our session notes structured this way? Why do I have to fill my session notes out the way that you're telling me to? I'm doing them wrong. I know I'm not doing them the way that you're telling me to, but why do I have to do them this way? I think it's ridiculous. It's not how I learned how to do them. Well, because I told you. That's not a good enough answer, right? Like not having some justification for what you're doing and the way that you've established things that goes back to first principles, which is our payers require this information to be in our session notes. This is why we have to do it. And being upfront where people don't really have to ask the why.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're educating your people on this is what we do, and the 4 W's, and then making sure they don't get blocked. This is the who, what, when, why, and if you get blocked, this is how you get around it. And I think it's hard sometimes, especially when you're lacking experience in specific areas of the business. We were talking about imposter syndrome. I think it was last week or the week before on the honesty calls, right? And people struggle with this. They're like, I don't feel like maybe I'm completely qualified to deal with all these situations. And the God's honest truth is you're probably not, right? Like nobody, when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. He was not qualified to land on the moon. He was rolling the dice. Nobody had ever done it before, and he certainly had, right? So there's things that you have to do that are new to you. And in order to gain that experience, there has to be a first time. You have to start off as a rookie, but getting to that first principles justification for why you're doing what you're doing and having that as your justification for everything is necessary, not just for your team, but also for you to walk confidently into that situation, knowing I'm going to do a training on how we're doing our session notes. The reason they are this way is because I just read the contracts. I understand how they need to be structured. And in order for us to get paid and be an operable business, this is how it has to be done. So making sure that you're not making BS rules. Don't fill the void with things that aren't rationalized and justified.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And going back to integrity, this actually is perfect. This is one thing I really coach people around, is that people really tend to relate to integrity as I'm good if I have it, if I'm bad if I'm not. And it's, you should have integrity, you shouldn't not. And that's it doesn't work, honestly, because from that view, every time I give my word to something, I create a condition of danger for myself. Because every promise I make is an opportunity to be bad. And that puts stress to, like, keeping promises becomes stressful. It becomes about like avoiding getting in trouble versus actually, what am I out to cause here? What do I want to contribute?
And then you end up being non-committal, like you're avoiding commitment. And that's not
exactly the other thing. And then you do stuff like, instead of making a promise, because a promise is dangerous, I do stuff like, oh, I'll get it to you as soon as I can, which is also a recipe for burnout. Now, what you're saying is really great, because if you take that, integrity is not good, bad, wrong. It's just really being whole, complete, sound, and undivided. Then why becomes really important. If I show you a bicycle and say, look, this thing has all its parts, there's nothing missing, there's nothing like added that's going to get in the way, there's nothing missing that's going to have it break down, you would say this is whole, complete, and undivided. Yeah, it has integrity, except what I haven't told you is what the bike is for yet, like the why of the bike. Now, if it's a road bike and I'm sending you mountain biking, that has no integrity, even though it's got all the parts, right? So the why is critical, because one, it allows you to operate with integrity from beyond the good, bad, I shouldn't, and focus more on what is this for. And in focusing on what it's for, it also lets people adapt when they're going to have to go outside of a process. Because then they say, okay, why did we have that process? Okay, I can't follow this process now. Whatever, the phones are down, or the internet's not working, or I don't have X, Y, or Z. We're out of this. At least I can know why we had that in place, and like then look for other ways to deliver the same thing. All right. So yeah, so the why is important for a lot of reasons.
Especially when you're in the infant stages of building your systems and you're building your processes for things. You're not going to cover everything. And one of the things I tell people is just cover what you know. Go through, cover the baseline critical operations for the business, and then you're going to be in a rhythm of just adding systems in as you go. But what the why gives you, and I hadn't actually really gone this far down this rabbit hole, but the why gives you the justification for the process. And if the person who is running that process understands the end goal, the justification for it, the result, and why it's needed, it's going to give them the ability to work around it when there are problems or there are bottlenecks. It's going to give them that side road that they can cut off to and actually still get things done, hopefully without calling you.
And realize when it's obsolete.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some story, I think I read it, Good to Great. I read this in a business book, but it was like kids watching their mom make a roast and she cuts the ends off. And the kid is like, why do you cut the ends off? And it's like, my mom did it that way. And so then they go to their mom and it's, why'd you cut the ends off? Well, my mom did that. And then they go to Greg and it's, why'd you cut the ends off? It's our oven was too small.
I've heard this.
Yeah. But that happens in organizations where things just get passed on as this is how we do things without really, does it actually work for us to do this? And that why will tell you.
If it's 2025 and your process says to send a fax to a certain number, you might want to check and see if they have email yet.
If they've still got a fax machine even.
So give us the down low on the assessment. So who should be using that? Who should be using this? What are they going to learn? How do they apply?
Yeah, great question. So I developed this. My wife is a clinic owner, and it's been hard for her to replace herself. That's been one barrier to growth. She's got some competent BCBAs, but having them take ownership of her vision has been a challenge. So I started with listening to her and then talked to a lot of owners as well. But how does this resonate with you? And came up with these skill sets that you would want to see in someone you were developing as leadership. So the first thing with this assessment is that it is for people who are already good at their job. This isn't like we're putting someone on a performance improvement plan or they need to develop the clinical skills or whatever it is they're doing. It is, they've got this handled, where the gap is then developing other people in their skill set. So the first thing to know is that just taking this assessment to someone is actually an acknowledgement that they're good at their job. And the intention is really communicate that. Hey, I want to go over this leadership assessment with you. And why I'm doing this is because I see you've got potential for leadership. Like you're someone I really value. I would like to see what you have spread out, diffused into our company, right?
I need a small sample of your blood so we can send it off to the lab and have you cloned.
That's kind of it. Like I want your skill set out there. And now where the gap is that I want to develop you to be someone who can actually develop people. So when you first give someone this assessment, I'm imagining that the way it works is you rate like 0, like never demonstrates this at all, to 5, reliably demonstrates this. So when you give someone this assessment, they're probably going to get a lot of 1s and 2s. And that's to be expected. And that's not a problem. That just points to, okay, you've actually got to focus on, you're pretty good with the company's visions. You can say the company's values when we're in a meeting and everything is going great. But what I don't see is you always making decisions under pressure so we've got to actually focus on and develop there. Am I answering your question?
Yeah. So it sounds like we have this topic that we discuss pretty frequently, which is unicorn hunting, right? Looking for that great employee. And when the rock star employee shows up, how to fully take advantage is not the right word, but how to fully capitalize on their skills and make sure that you're making a permanent impact on your business by, number one, spreading their approach and their skills out to your other employees. And number two, investing some portion of their time into your system development so that their approach is reflected in your processes, like actually in your documentation. So when a new person comes in and is getting trained, some of what that high performing employee does and their way of doing things will help to evolve your overall company's way of doing things. But it sounds like what I understand from it is you're doing a close inspection on what that is about that employee that makes them great, how to help improve them a bit, and then how to extract some of that for the rest of your team. Am I getting that right?
Close. It's more design. And I think what you're saying is really valuable and important. It's not what the assessment points to. The assessment more points to, Derek, you're awesome. Like you do great clinical work. And now what there is for you to do is I want you to open my next clinic. And you're not at the place where you can manage a clinic yet. So we're going to work on these different skills. and pinpoint what you're already strong at, where the gaps are, so that we can really focus on the gaps so that you can develop into a clinical leader. Are you up for playing that game?
And this is huge for path forward and growth and them shaping their career and understanding there's room for growth. And this circles back to what we were talking about with retaining employees or them considering leaving the company. If they're on this path, if you've engaged in something like this with a high performing employee, they're more likely to stay too.
Yeah, and part of this came from my wife's got an employee who is really great in that she really wants to contribute. She's really willing to put in the above and beyond. And there are some people management and leadership skills that are just missing, where she can't have that conversation where, you know what, I'd like to open another clinic and I want you to be the one to take that, right? Or to take the lead on that.
I almost want to get my hands on this thing and do it to myself. Is that a useful tool?
You should, man. You should, because here's the truth is that we've all got room for growth. This is one thing that I've dealt with in my business is that I haven't replicated myself. Now, I know like some of those things on the assessment I'm really good at, like planning. One of the things is actually just being able to plan. I arbitrarily set it at 2 months ahead, but adjust that to the needs of your business. I actually plan 15 weeks ahead. I'm really good at that. What I haven't done is trained and developed other coaches and consultants. So yeah, I would absolutely say give it to yourself and see what.
So I don't want people watching this to think I don't have any employees, so I don't really have anybody to evaluate. This is something to keep in your toolbox to go over and do an honest self-evaluation.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're watching this and if you're a BCBA working for a company, take the assessment, give it to your clinical director or your regional director and say, hey, I'd actually like to develop some skills. Assess me. And I'm going to assess myself. Let's compare notes, right? Yeah. And then based on it, you got to make a plan for, oh, wow. Okay, so the people around me actually don't have clear goals. What am I going to do to build into my practices so I know what their goals are and that they're setting goals and that they're moving towards them?
And building the habits to get to those goals.
Yeah, and that's the part the assessment will say, oh, that's an area to develop. And then you would work with your clinical director, your mentor, whomever to say, if you're a business owner, you get a coach, but do the work to say, here's my plan for exactly, and that's exactly it, is building the habits so that these things become ingrained and natural. Planning isn't something I don't really like planning. And it's ingrained that every Monday or Tuesday, I am spending an hour actually like looking ahead 15 weeks, what's out there. And if I skip a week, it starts to feel itchy because it's a habit. It's a habit at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of business owners in general. We're really good at making excuses. We're really good at coming up with reasons to not invest time, money, whatever it might be into a venture. And we always have our reasons. My business really doesn't work that way. You don't know, this industry is totally different from what you're used to. With all the lack of creativity that we struggle with sometimes, we could just come up with some amazing things. But I think that setting all of that aside and just taking a moment to be honest with yourself about all areas of your business and just think, am I really the person who I want to be? Am I really the one that 5 years from now, where am I going to be? What kind of person am I going to be? How do I envision myself and how am I going to get there? And if I go back 5 years, am I the person now that I would have looked forward to back then? And really taking a moment of honesty every now and then, probably quarterly, and just looking at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and going back to first principles and looking at that. And if I weren't myself, would I view me as someone with integrity? Do I trust what I say when I'm saying it? Do I really believe that when I speak the words, is it going to happen? And in my case, now that I've said it, now I got to make it happen. So is that a part of you? And if it's not, it's okay. You can build that part of you. You can make yourself into that person, and you can change a lot of things about yourself. By nature, I'm a disorganized person. I just like to fly by the seat of my pants. And everything that I do, we teach organizational strategy. And I use the line, they call it an organization for a reason. If it's disorganized, it's not an organization. That is not part of my built-in personality. Like, that's not part of my DNA. My DNA is high risk. We're going to fly by the seat of our pants. We'll make it work we'll figure it out. And I have to intentionally and with a great amount of purpose sit down and force myself to write out a business plan, to define what the mission is, define what the vision is. And going through our blueprint series, Josh will tell you, as I've been going through this and structuring how this needs to be done, you have to define this about your business. I've rewritten probably half of the stuff in my businesses, just going through that, thinking, hey, I really need to apply this to myself. You have that moment of honesty where you're like, oh, I'm teaching this, I'm preaching the sermon here, but am I actually doing this in my own life? And to some extent, yes. But some of this stuff hasn't been visited in a while, and it's time to bring it out, dust off the old books, and check out what's in there and make sure that we're staying aligned. And I think the assessment tool is a good opportunity, a good tool to use in that moment, or to create that moment for yourself and really reflect.
I think so too. I am curious, what difference, like what you're saying, I really appreciate you're saying it's work for me to do things that I know work. And what difference have you seen that's made for you? Being someone who's, you know what, going from let's fly by the seat of our pants to, like, you know what, let's plan a quarter ahead or a year ahead or whatever.
I can go down that rabbit hole. Josh has seen me break down in tears telling ABA owners my story. I was 31 years old, and as it turns out, I was okay, but thought I was having a heart attack. I was dehydrated. I had flushed all the potassium out of my system, and my left arm was starting to cramp up, and I couldn't breathe. And I thought I was having a heart attack. I started my business when I was 26, and I was mentored by a gentleman named Anthony Lomangino, Lomangino. And if you Google that name, you will see a guy who pops up, and he's a billionaire. That's the guy. And I worked for Anthony, and I understood I was 2 steps away from him. My boss's boss was him, right? And that's how I started off my career. And that's where I was when I finished school. And we were in the sanitation business. At 21 years old, I was running a 65 truck roll-off operation, a 15 truck front load operation with the little front load dumpsters they tip over the back. I had 6 recycling facilities. I had a ton of responsibilities, but I was working within that corporate environment, that organizational structure. And I knew what was behind building it. I was in business school while I was doing this. So I knew in my mind what needed to be done. I just never took it seriously enough to really apply it to my life. I started my business when I was 26. Anthony told me I was not allowed to work for him for more than 5 years, and I had to go start my own business. So that was the deal. So I knew at some point I was out of there anyway. And I started my business at 26, doing a lot of high-end technology stuff. I had a lot of employees running around. At one time, I had 13 people running around that were on my team. And it was a lot of stuff. It was just me slamming and jamming all the time, on the phone, on the email, just constantly going. And source of truth was all here. So if anybody needed something, they knew who to call. It was me all the time. I had a very flat organizational chart. My employees were trained. They would start to understand. One of my other business mentors had taught me the 4 blocks, right? And this is aligned with your assessment, which is when the employee is 4 blocks away from me, that means they're just starting. They haven't really learned anything about the job. They have to ask me everything, but they work through 3, 2, and then 1. When they get into that number 1 block, they think the way I think. They're reacting or responding to these different situations basically the same way I would. I had probably 3 block 2 employees and the rest of them were at least block 3. And I had one block 1. I had one guy who did everything his way.
Yeah.
His way was my way. Like, we were matched up and in sync. And he ran one side of the business, I ran the other. And it caught up to me after about 4.5, 5 years. And it caught up to me hard. We were profitable. We were making a lot of money. Everything was good. Everybody seemed to be happy. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. My number one guy was driving me to the hospital. And this is where I broke down and I explained, I poured my heart out. I said, this whole thing killed me. It actually killed me. And I know that you're running your thing, all that stuff is fine, but you don't feel the pressure like I do. And you don't really get the risk side of it. And all that's piled on me. And I thought it killed me. So on that ride to the hospital, I had that moment where I said, I'm not doing this anymore. This is not how I'm going to do things. I had read a book in school by Michael Gerber called The E-Myth Revisited. And I read that book, didn't leave my house for a week. I filled up about 8 pages of legal pads and proceeded to spend the next 3 weeks going to work. Like, I went to work and basically wrote down everything in my business, how I wanted it to be done, how it must be done, and developed out our way of doing things. Ended up being a 273-page document that I divided up into manuals. There were 13 total. And that was my caveman approach to, I just got to get what's in my mind on paper and just get it down, not worry too much about how it's organized. Then over the course of the next 6 months, started implementing these systems and these procedures. And being in my early 30s, the leadership skills were somewhat there, but not completely. I ended up having to turn over about half the team before I had people in that were walking in from day one. This is how we do it. This is how things work. And what that has evolved into, and I think it's important to see what's on the other side of this. What it's evolved into is we have business units that now operate consistently and they run themselves. I'm a micromanager and I'm disorganized by nature. Those two things in combination are unhealthy for a business owner because you want to micromanage and you can't do it in an organized way. So the approach that was adopted was just heavy documentation, making sure that all of our team members, the first thing you need to know is where to find the answers. This is where you go to find the answers. And as long as you're within these boundaries, you can do whatever you feel is necessary, right? And that's allowed us to scale from a little computer service company in Hobe Sound, Florida, to a nationwide IT provider. And now we've got things that are outsourced because when I'm able to take a process and it's so well documented, we've tested multiple ways of doing it over the years, and then hand it to a team who just does that all day long. And we say, this is how it's done. We want it done this way. That's a much more scalable operation.
And how's your peace of mind?
Oh, much better. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm 41 now. So we've been on this path for about 10 years. And you know what? Everything we do today is completely different from what we did 10 years ago. And the process that I gave Josh 2 years ago that he's taken over looks nothing like what I gave him now, because we're actually able to evolve those systems. Josh has a better way of doing things. Those systems are actually able to evolve.
Yeah. Awesome. I got to watch the time a little bit. I want to end with that and just point to everything you just said. It wasn't like your personality's in the way of doing this. It was just like, it's a little uncomfortable to do this. The stuff, like writing 275 pages is a pain in the ass. And
Took a month.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? And you can do it. It's behavior. And if you learn how to do that, and actually I just fly by the seat of my pants, but I'm going to learn to be organized. I'm going to learn how to hand things off to people. I'm going to learn how to develop people. And then you get to run a much more effective company and have a lot more peace of mind.
And it's freedom.
Yeah.
Like, your freedom is having a business running itself that I spend literally 10 to 20% of my time there. The other 80, 90% of my time is all on ABA Impact. This is our mission. This is our passion. So not having to just focus on the thing that pays you all the time, 24/7 to keep it paying you, that's what gives you your freedom. And that leadership credibility and being able to say what you mean what you say is a lot of it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and Derek doing that made my job so much easier. And then we created this culture where like the people that work under me, I create those same types of SOPs and things like that for them to do, and it makes their job easier. And like we all love working here. So it's all because of that foundation.
So get the assessment, do it on yourself, find your rock star employee, or keep it for when you find your rock star employee. If you're working at an ABA company, take this assessment, give it to your boss, tell them to assess you. I want to move up. I want to grow my career. But at the very least, get the assessment, check it out, have a moment of honesty with yourself and anyone else you feel you should have that moment of honesty with. And Scott, thank you. That was really awesome. I feel like I just got out of a therapy session.
Oh, interesting. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for the opportunity to come talk about what I love talking about. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. We'll do it again soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will see you on the ABA Business Challenges group.
You're already doing the work, investing your time, your energy, and your vision. So let's make it count. Build something that works without breaking you. The EBCBA Blueprint is the way. Get started for free with our foundation course.